Hello, Webflow Conf. Really excited about today's conversation of growing a Webflow business through collaboration. My name is Mason Poe, and I'm with Edgar Allan.
My name is Matt Varughese. I am with 80/20.
And my name's Emily Giordano, and I'm the host of the Great Design Lead podcast.
And today's conversation, it really grew out of a phone call that started, or a series of phone calls that started about 2 years ago. So Matt, you sent me a DM on Twitter and was just like, hey man, interested in some of the stuff you've been building and love to just jump on a call with you. And since then, we've been able to talk about a whole range of things that kind of happen in the agency space. It goes back to a thesis that I have as it relates to both growing an agency and then a lot of the stuff that Webflow allows us to do, which I refer to as the opportunity gap. The opportunity gap is this concept that, within this new emerging set of tools, we're able to go and deliver at an exponential kind of rate of value for our clients. And yet within that value, that there's only business acumen that we learn incrementally. And there's so many ways to be able to learn about the tools and and ways to build for the web, but it's almost like this dark art of how to just like run a business and work with teams and things along those lines. And I think I'm really excited about covering off today is, how I think, all of our careers have grown, not through just the work that we've been able to do, but like how we've been able to get to know other people that we can work with that happen to be outside of our kind of immediate companies or agencies or whatever. Emily, I'm excited that you've joined us today. And, Matt and I, we've talked a lot. You and I have, talked a good bit as well and really enjoyed what you've been building with your podcast. And so I thought you'd be the perfect person to kind of guide us through this conversation and, see what we can, share with the community, but also how we can maybe talk about some of the general values that have led to things that Matt and I have learned.
Yeah, I know today hanging out together is about you guys and your journey, but I'm very happy to be here along for the ride. I think a good place to start, and the way that I start all of my podcasts, is talking a little bit more about who you were before web designer, who you were as a kid or things like that. I started learning about Adobe and Photoshop and things like that. And so that was my first introduction to anything digital and online, taking art classes at the Baum School of Art in Allentown. And so this is my a little blast from the past for me.
The moment I really started working on the web in a very meaningful way was in my early high school years. I actually remember the site that I loved. It was Airbnb. I just found out about the platform, and it was so cool to me that you could have this website where anyone can list their home, and someone across the world could find it, talk with the host, book it, and this entire transaction happened. And it was probably built, early days of Airbnb, it's probably built in someone's home, the actual platform, which is amazing to me. And so this idea that you could build something in your home or office, and anyone else in the world with an internet connection can access it, use it, talk to you, I find that to be amazing. And so that's my moment.
And then Mason,
kind of right out of high school, early college, happened to be up at Paoli Peaks, Indiana for a ski trip. And so I'm camping out inside of this little itty bitty lodge with a friend. I remember I was sitting in the art lab, and someone next to me had opened this site called the Flash Challenge. Up until this point, everything was more like sort of GeoCities, or just really kind of garish and sort of ugly. And then I saw this this beacon of light of all of the things that the web could be, even though some of those things were really horrible. It was all sorts of, if you want to see mistakes of web design, it is littered with early Flash work. But it was also a really great kind of no-code platform, because I could do everything. And I could go in and I could build and design and embed typefaces and have interactions and start to work with how to do general programming. And so it was a really exciting time. And I would say that that early period, it was so full of hope. And sometimes, it didn't work. And even now, trying to go back to that early feeling is something I try to reference.
Matt, when you started your agency in high school, could you tell me a little bit about that experience and how this all started for you?
Yeah. So in high school, I took a couple classes that I think were really important to like my career and like getting into web design. Specifically, it was a fundamentals of technology class, and then I think intro to web design class. And so in both of those classes, in the intro to web design class, like I learned Dreamweaver. You know, I don't even know if people still use that, but you know, I learned Dreamweaver, and I thought it was like one of the coolest things. You could just, again, build something on your computer, and then just like anyone in the world with an internet connection can access it. And then I learned Weebly, and I was just like, wow, an amazing visual builder that like nothing can ever top. And I can just drag and drop things on a page, and like, so I got really excited about it. And it was like around that time, it was like my junior or senior year of high school, that I had to figure out what I was doing with my life. And I really enjoyed web design. But like I needed to go to college at the same time. And my parents definitely wanted me to go the traditional route of like a doctor, lawyer, and engineer. I didn't want to go that route. And I was like, I know that like the thing that I really love doing is web design, web development, if you can call it that at the time. And so I started my agency, Websterpiece. It was originally called Websterpiece, but spelled differently, Piece, to be like a masterpiece of the web. And then I found out another company has a trademark on that name, and I couldn't use it. So I just changed it to Piece. And I just like in between classes, like during lunch, I would just like go to the library and like build this, Websterpiece site with the ugliest logo. And I would just talk a big game, be like, oh yeah, we have, countless years of experience. And it was just me in high school, like just trying to land clients. And so I actually continued that business all the way through college. And, that actually took me to 80/20. I ended up selling that company, and it merged with 80/20.
And then to turn it over to you, Mason, you worked at larger companies, and then you built Edgar Allan. So tell me about your experience over there.
Starting Edgar Allan wasn't a thing that I really set out to do. I just didn't see a place that I wanted to go. And I've seen a lot of inefficiencies within the agency world, and I've seen a lot of ways that the agency world kind of is broken. And I just wanted to go back to a really simple idea of, like, at the end of the day, it's about just having a great story. Having a great story can mean a whole lot of things, but I think for me, it's really about the people that we can work with, how I can work with people that I admire every single day and be able to do work that I'm very proud of. And it's not necessarily about just this sort of quick win or, chasing awards or, just this more sort of superficial things, which are all really great. Like I think that's wonderful. But it's more about trying to craft a way of working rather than just, any type of more superficial idea of what an agency means.
Matt, when you decided to reach out to Mason and set up these calls 2 years ago, what really led you to do that, and why did you start?
Yeah, around 2 years ago is when I sold my first agency that I started in high school, and I took over another agency called 80/20, and it was like an established no-code Webflow agency, and it's what I do today. And my business partner, Andrew, he owns this company called Tiny Capital, which, it's a holding company for a lot of different, very large agencies. And so one of the pieces of advice he gave me when I started was, hey, set up calls to these people, like start talking to them, learn from them. They have a lot of experience. You can like learn a ton and like apply that to 80/20. And so I was like, great. And I started doing that. And they were just like, I've never done that in my career. Just like talk to people, even if we're like on, we're on the same team, in Tiny Capital, but like I've never done that sort of thing where I just like talk to people and like chat about business. And I found it so refreshing and meaningful, and like I learned a ton. And at the same time, I think I like saw Mason on Twitter, and like to me, like Edgar Allan is like one of the top agencies, and I like really admired the work. And so I think, like Mason said, I'm pretty sure I just DM'd him one day, and I was just like, hey, like really like love what you do. Like, do you want to just like catch up one day? And I did that call with Mason, and again, it was interesting because like Mason is a competitor. But like it was so refreshing, and like you meet people and you're just like, wow, you're a good person and you're really smart, and that's probably less common than you think. And so I'm just like, this is like delightful for me maybe we should make these recurring, just like once a month, catch up, talk business. Cause it was just like, it was great. And so I actually ended up doing that with a handful of other people as well. Also all competitors and just people that I trust and like really respect and admire, both like on the work side and the personal side. And it's been one of the best decisions of my career because I've just like learned so much from all these people. And it's just great to know that like on the best days, like you got someone to celebrate the wins with other than your team, but like on your worst days, you got someone to call and be like, hey, this sucks right now. And like, maybe I get a lot of advice from Mason. So yeah, that's what led me here. And I'm so glad I'm here because I think that has actually been a huge part of like where 80/20 has gotten today. It's just like learning from my peers.
There was a period where we didn't tell anyone that we were working in Webflow. It was kind of like our secret. It was our secret sauce. And when you'd reach out on Twitter, I think, we'd really, I'd say only been out in the open for maybe a year and a half or something along those lines, which I think is like it's sort of this mindset of like, I'm going to try to keep everything just for myself and protect this little, hill that I'm on. But, what I've found is that like, as I started sharing more with the community, I would learn more with the community. And I think, what I was inspired by from you is like I hadn't ever thought of setting up calls with other people. And I know it's like just a really simple, it's such a simple idea. It's like, oh duh, like you just try to like commiserate and learn from other people. But yeah, I think that was a great piece of advice from Andrew, and the way that you approach those calls also made me feel really comfortable. It's a big part of it because, I think we have competed on stuff.
Totally.
And so there's sometimes I'm just like, that Matt,
and likewise.
Yeah. So, I've just learned so much from these calls, and I've now started to set up, just general check-ins and conversations. And, it's like, while I've been in the space for a while, the space changes so quickly. And that's one of the things, again, back to that original thing, like the opportunity gap is real, and that while the technologies are changing and you might have like a high level of business acumen, you're going to get outpaced with the tools.
Yep.
And so it's really trying to bring these two things together, both for people that have been in it a while, but also people that are really new. And I think being able to cross those paths is where there's a lot of power to grow together.
When you talk about reaching out to people, when you talk about connecting with other people, I can definitely relate to that after doing so many episodes with people throughout the design world, copywriting, development, everything like that. And so when it comes to I'm almost at 100 episodes in a couple weeks probably, and I think the main thing that I've learned from the people that have come on, especially the people that have been through rough times and are successful now, the thing that I've gotten from that is how humble people are, and how that's such a strength to know that you don't know everything, and you need to reach out to other people, and you also need to bring people on that are better than you in so many different things in life. I know some people say that when they're leading a company, often they feel like the least experienced person, or they feel like a temp in a bunch of different areas of their company. But I think that that's something that takes so much maturity and humility to do, and it's something that I've seen in really successful people that I've spoken to. I'm seeing that in you guys, and so I think that if I had to go back on all the episodes that I've done, that's something that would really stand out over time.
And something that I admire within the work that you've done within your podcast is how amazing it is that you've even been able to have these conversations and be able to get to know people just as humans, and then for people to get to know you and your work. And so that's often really undervalued, the sort of skill of listening. The other thing that, if I was to think back onto one of your episodes, the one with Joe from FinSuite, and he talked about a different piece of advice was like, whether like to go out, like I think he was getting pressure from his parents as well on like if he should be a lawyer or something along those lines. And and so he went and decided to go and interview a bunch of lawyers, and he was like, oh man, this sounds horrible. But I think that's the same type of thing, like being able to understand a bit around like where you might want your career to go, and what the day in and day out is like. And while it might look really amazing to do, something super flashy, like I don't know, like 3D work, or even doing UX research or things along those lines, you might talk with that person and find out like, oh my gosh, applying color in 3D is so difficult and it is so laborious, and I don't think I have the patience for it. But I think just coming from a point of like general curiosity is, I think, the main thing that I've learned really from both of you.
And I think that segues perfectly into the next topic of having that openness and curiosity, but also trust between you two, and as well as other relationships that you have with other agency leaders or people that you may compete on projects with. I know that you talked about already, hey, maybe sometimes I see him post something, I'm like, oh, I wish I did that. Mm-hmm. But I think you talk a lot about the trust that you have with each other, to not think that, oh, I'm giving something up, or he's going to use this piece of information when I'm in a vulnerable position against me. So you want to talk a little bit about what that's like between the two of you?
The biggest thing here is like the trust that I have with Mason. And you could tell that from like the first call that we had together. It was just like, and with anyone that I have recurring calls with, I don't feel like I'm giving away secrets. And I might be like talking about my company stuff and things that I would never say in public. I think that the thing is we have very similar value systems. And then if I tell Mason something, I have full trust that like it's not going to become public information that like people are going to use against me. And he's not going to be like, hey, you owe me because like I'm keeping this a secret. It's just like it's not a misaligned thing. And I find that so valuable in my position at 80/20, and because it's just like, you called me actually a couple weeks ago and we were both sharing just like a couple like low points that we were having, and you were just like, it was nice to commiserate with you, and I was like, yeah, this is actually really nice. But like that, both of those things are like stories that I don't think we would share publicly. I'm not going around telling that information about Mason, and he's not telling it about me, and so I find that just like so valuable.
Yeah, something that I go back to is this idea that it's a relationship business at the end of the day, and it's about establishing those relationships, and relationships are difficult and they take work and investment and trust and all the stuff that typically happen, but then also trying to look at just like, okay, being objective at times and making sure that everything is keeping going, and that full sort of cycle of things can just, I don't know, for me it puts me in like it spins my head around.
And when you do talk about these things, sometimes you're especially even at a low point, or when you're really excited about something, maybe it might be like something that's kind of private, and you're worried about giving something away. I feel like between you guys, that's not really a concern, but it's really nice to be able to share things with people, especially things that are like quiet, small wins. But it's still nice to share that with somebody who's in a similar space.
Interestingly enough, I've had some of these calls where it's like, I was like, yeah, sure, let's catch up. Someone will reach out to me or I'll reach out to them. And like the first call, to your point, was very like gossipy. It's like, oh, did you hear about this? Or like, oh, like they're actually not doing that well. And I'm just like, as soon as that's the first call, it sets a precedent that like these are the future calls of just like, and that's not something that's like, that I want to be a part of. That's not what I want these calls to be. I want it to be like a spot where like people can just openly talk, but like not talk down on others. That's not the point of our calls. Yep. And so I think if like it's a very active like gossip session, or like you're just trying to like punch down, it's just not something I want to be a part of.
When people listen to this and they think, oh, I've done that before. I know a lot of people have probably, it's very easy to compare yourself to other people. And so with what you're talking about, it sounds a lot like people who really aren't living in the present, maybe for some sort of fear or anxiety that they have about it, as well as people who, when they look at their identity or their identity of their agency, it's almost like their identity only exists in comparison to other people. And so when you're always comparing yourself to people, especially when you don't know the whole context of maybe what that agency is going through or what that freelancer is going through, it can be very hard to even just focus on what you have going on when you're constantly focused on other people. So when you think about somebody who's in that state, like what, have you been there? What would you say to somebody who's listening and saying, oh, I do that, and they don't like that I do that. Maybe I shouldn't do that. I want to get better. I don't want to be annoying.
The one thing that's actually like my calls with people have taught me is that social media is everyone's highlight reel.
Yeah.
You see all of the best moments and you compare your entire life to like this like small subsect of a win, like a awesome new client or an awesome project that like really got launched or launched well. And so on the note of comparison, like I think it's like it's easy to do, but like it's a habit that I've personally had to like unlearn. But on like the topic of like, oh, if I do these things, to me that's like honestly probably like I used to do these things at the beginning of my career. And it just I think it's an easy fix. It's just like a matter of like observing the fact that you do it and then just dialing it back. Everything's recoverable. There's also a ton of people in this space that are just like just really nice and like great to talk to. And so I think you can it's a totally resolvable thing.
Yeah, we're just humans and we're imperfect.
Of course.
We have like
100%.
There's always going to be pettiness, or there's going to be all sorts of like crazy things that are going on in your head. And even sometimes now, and I've learned so much from like our calls, then I'll be like, oh, I don't want to like this thing or something. Like I don't want to like, endorse something for some silly reason. And that's not how it has to be. I think, you can like be really comfortable in your strengths and what you're good at, and then find the things that you want to be better at.
Yeah, I think especially for this industry, it's not like real estate. It's not something that's finite. More success for you does not mean less success for me.
Totally.
For sure. And so you started talking 2 years ago. When we think about unexpected benefits from chatting, I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that you didn't expect when you first started talking. You barely even knew each other. Now you're sitting next to each other in the same place. I'm sure there's a lot of things that were like unexpected wins or lessons that you learned from each other.
One of the really nice things is that I now have someone, and like there's a handful of people that I get this with, that I can just pick up the phone when I'm either having a rough day in the agency life and I like want to talk to them about it, or celebrate a win, or just like sanity check. And through that, I get to learn just like on the spot from like someone that's been doing it for quite some time. And so to me, it's just like the benefit is on demand, just like support. And on demand, just like the ability to be able to pick up the phone and talk to someone that like is in your exact shoes as well, but is like many years ahead of you is very undervalued in my opinion.
I would also say, I mean, for me, it's I can't remember where the idea came from, but this idea of like a tennis partner makes you stronger. I think you had said that.
You always want to play with a better tennis player.
Yeah.
I often look at Matt as like a better tennis player.
And it's mutual.
Seriously. So you've been able to build so much so quickly. And I mean, 80/20 is like a totally different company than when you started, in a really great way. It's grown like it never has. And I feel like that's, within these conversations, and when I kind of look out, it's being able to, again, see those wins and then wanting to reach to that level, as opposed to wanting to try to pull someone else down.
You never want to do crabs in a bucket. the terms crabs in a bucket is if there's a bunch of crabs in a bucket, if one tries to get out, all the other crabs will pull them back down. And then nobody goes anywhere. So I like
interesting
what you said a little bit ago of a rising tide lifts all ships. I think that's better than crabs in a bucket. And so the last thing that we want to end on is this closing quote that Mason found and has a lot of meaning, and I'll throw it over to you to wrap up.
Yeah, so this is just something from the book South by Ernest Shackleton, modified it just a little bit, but it's this idea that was put in a paper to recruit people for this voyage around the Antarctic. TLDR within the book, everyone lives, so it's good. But the quote goes, "Help wanted, questionable wages, bitter cold, long hours of complete darkness. Safe return doubtful, and honor and recognition in the event of success." And I think for me, that just represents so much of the agency and services business. And so, Emily, I'd love to hear from you, as someone that's, freelancing, like what does this make you feel?
When you think about something that is that much of a risk when you're starting something new, especially if it's not very likely for you to succeed, or maybe you've never seen somebody succeed in this thing before, I feel like a lot of people feel that throughout their career. Maybe they're changing course, maybe they're doing something totally different. Maybe you're in college and you realize, hey, I don't want to be an engineer, or maybe do this other thing. I want to do something that I'm actually passionate about. It's scary, especially if you've never, you don't have an example of somebody who's done what you've done. So safe return doubtful. But there's also this idea of like a light at the end of the tunnel of honor and recognition in the event of success, where a lot of people do make it to the end. A lot of people put a lot of work in. It takes a couple of years. It takes a lot of effort. There's a lot of people along the way that you're lucky enough to meet to teach you the ways. But it sounds a lot of someone taking a risk in their career and maybe making it in the end, but you never know. And that's what makes it worth it, because it wasn't easy.
There's so many people on, especially in the audience, that are on this journey of like figuring out freelance, figuring out agency life. And like the fact of the matter is, it's really hard. Like running a business, any type of business is hard, but like especially a client service business where you have all these different aspects on top of the work itself, I think it is really hard work, but it's really meaningful work, because that step in that direction of starting your own thing or going out on your own is a representation of like, hey, like a better life, or the life that you want to live, to your point. Like, you know, what do you want to do at the end of the day? And to me, like, I think like anyone that goes on that route, like I think they are successful, and like in the end they will get the honor and recognition that they're looking for. And so yeah, I think it just goes to show that like those risks are like they might seem daunting, but like at the end of the day, it very well may pay off.
Yeah, hard things are hard to get.
Yeah, great point.
Yeah, what is it's like? There's a reason hard things are hard, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think for me, it's that exact same type of thing. It's definitely more of a feeling of going out on an adventure. And I've said before, like adventure is just misery in retrospect, and kind of like recognizing that. I think another thing that can be deceiving is that there's some sort of magic carpet ride that you just jump on, and it's like, oh, 7 steps to growing your agency, and that's like not the case.
Yeah.
No, not at
like
all.
That's not like how it works. And it doesn't matter if you're doing some sort of like fancy pricing model, which is value based or like whatever. It's really just you know, I think for me, probably a thing that was really great is starting out for the right reasons, and this idea of like just honor. And for us, it wasn't about, you know, awards and like all the superficial stuff. It was just the ability to work with people that I admire in a way that I wanted to work, and to build, you know, great stuff. And that's what I think keeps me going. And it's like a why, and trying to have a really good sense of your why is like you're, you know, heading out on this adventure and just realizing it's going to be miserable at times, but great as well.
Yeah. I think that's a lovely note to end on.
Thank you, Emily, for hosting. And Matt, it's awesome that you were able to make it here through multiple plane rides and things along those lines. And yeah, so to everyone else out there, you know, thank you for joining us. I will see you online or, you know, at the Webflow conference. So thank you.
See you.
Have a great time, guys.